On that evening of July 30th, it was July 30th, 2001, this dramatic breakthrough occurred, and all of the men at the same time simultaneously entered into this state of an evolutionary non-duality, of a state of shared ecstatic oneness, where everybody was mutually aware of this tremendous forward-reaching intelligence that was surging through all of them. And the miracle of it was that they were aware of the fact that they were all ecstatically aware of the bliss of non-duality, of oneness, in a way that was completely overwhelming, and were simultaneously aware of their own uniqueness and the presence of the oneness, the oneness that was surging towards the future, was not obliterating their awareness of their own uniqueness. It all was happening in the same place and in the same space. So this was a state of consciousness in which the mind and self of the individual was suddenly being animated by this creative intelligence, and they were all aware that this was all happening at the same time, and they began to bear witness to what they were experiencing, and this intelligence began to speak through different individuals. And it was the same force, it was the same spiritual force that was speaking in a very unique way through different individuals. And they were all aware of it, and they were speaking from the same place that I speak from when I teach. So what I want to do now is I want to read some testimonials to you, which I think will give you a sense of the excitement of what was happening. And not all of these letters I'm going to read to you are from that particular eve. They're not from that particular event. But because we had many of these breakthroughs, and I'm not sure which is which. But maybe before I read them, I want to maybe tell more of the story that is coming to my mind. So this breakthrough happened, and I'm going to read to you about what happened. But then, of course, everybody knew that once this breakthrough had happened, that something for our community was different, because now everybody knew what I've been talking about. I've been talking about this stuff for years. And different things had happened, but people didn't really get it. Now they said, oh, now I understand this is exactly what he meant. So suddenly, the goal of all of our practice and all of the pressure I've been putting on people, everybody suddenly understood this is why, it's for all this. And this is more than worth it. Everybody knew that. We never, at that time in 2000, we never heard of intersubjective non-duality. We never heard of an enlightenment that's a shared state experience, let alone enlightenment that's a shared state of consciousness that's reaching towards the future. I'd never heard of anything like it. And neither had they. And we knew that we were really onto something. But then there were, well, maybe I'll just read the letters and that'll tell more of the story when I'm finished. So this is from a fellow named Dave. He says, "Dear Andrew, during our meeting tonight, the shift occurred. But instead of going into the familiar clarity and ecstasy of what we had come to identify as the authentic self, we found ourselves face to face with consciousness that was wild, churning, and chaotic. It was totally disarming and disorienting, absolutely engaging and completely thrilling. It blew apart everything we thought we knew about the process of conscious evolution. It was as if we had ventured outside of the zone of domesticated consciousness and were pioneers in the new frontier of consciousness as yet to be tamed. And we knew that we were not alone in this exploration, that in fact a hole had been blasted in the mine shaft of consciousness, and we were simply tapping that new vein of gold that Fox Hollow had already discovered. God knows what happens next. I wouldn't be anywhere else or anyone else in this world. With a blown mind and an unconflicted heart, Dave." So as you see, most of them have a level of, there's a force of nature. So this is from Chris, who was one of my closest senior students, who ran a center in London. This is from October 2002. "Dear Andrew, I am stunned, awed, and bursting with joy that it is a new dawn. Something has shifted. It will never be the same again. Evolutionary enlightenment has been unleashed, and your efforts of all these years have finally led to this seismic explosion and leap in consciousness that is irrevocable. Each day is a new universe. The women had what sounded like a momentous worldwide phone call, bringing them all up to speed, and the fire leapt across the firebreak of the Atlantic Ocean to engulf everyone in its path and become even stronger. The men here in London are way different than ever before. The phone call catapulted everyone, and I literally mean everyone, into enlightened mind, guru mind, and now it is working on all of us. Now the guys understand what you always said impersonal enlightenment is: a raging forest fire with no connection to lighting a match. Because I made this distinction earlier in my teaching, what's the difference between personal enlightenment and impersonal enlightenment? I said the difference between a burning match and a raging forest fire. Now this is everyone's experience. Impersonality is now a living fact, ever deepening as we give expression to it, and not something to aim towards, but identical with ecstatic intimacy. You can see the teachings exploding into life as this force grows, and the more everyone speaks about and gives their attention to this unknown and captivating enlightened consciousness, the more it is able to speak through us, as us, and the more it can manifest, and the momentum is growing. And then the real brotherhood that is instantly between the men, he was speaking about the women earlier, that is of a completely different order, that is a fact and is only the truth. It is one voice. What a miracle after all these years. This really is the beginning of something extraordinarily sacred, which I have longed to have happen. This is from a fellow named Peter Mitchell. A new being has been born, consciousness freed from the individual, no longer just a potential, but an actuality unleashed in this world as an entity unto itself. That is none other than our true self. Its power is growing. With every meeting, the depth that is revealed goes off the scale. This is not the possession of any single man present. We were all aware that we were seeing through the eyes of something unbelievably greater than any one of us. Yet that depended on everything being given from everyone to give it life. It is alive, it is life itself, and in its presence we are released into our true humanity. This is a new time. The old is being swept away in the face of this tidal wave that is gaining momentum. Ego cringes in the face of its magnificence and burns up in its searing flame of true understanding. All any of us can do is bow down utterly before it, purify ourselves for its sake, and give our lives to its bidding for all eternity. Here we go. This is another one. Last night we literally reached critical mass and exploded. As more and more voices expressed the same doubtless conviction, the transformative power left off the scale of anything we've experienced before. The change in just 24 hours was truly phenomenal as we plunged deeper and deeper into ecstatic intimacy. We were a tornado absolutely out of control, a raging forest fire burning and consuming all ignorance and separation in our way. Revelation after revelation as the living understanding of the sweetest perfection of your teaching are unraveled in front of our eyes. The emerging presence of a mystery that can never be known, all it recognizes is one, and it's on a seek and destroy mission against all separation. We were on our knees before this miraculous phenomena, impersonal enlightenment, the likes of which has never been experienced or expressed. What is happening in just 72 hours heralds unbelievable revolutionary possibilities for mankind. We are on our knees in gratitude and reverence. This explosive force is unstoppable. None of us have any idea where we are going, and yet undeniably this is why we're with you, to be consumed in the white heat of perfect communion. This is from someone named Matt. He says, is all this really happening? Can it really be that what has never happened is now happening, and that it is really happening between us, through us, as us? Has humanity and the concept of what it means to be a human being just taken a giant, immeasurable leap into the fourth dimension? I knew in the deepest cells of my body that something had never been entered through the door. I knew that something that had never been entered through the doors of possibility and declared itself as real in our last meeting. We stumbled upon the potential for this as a handful of us only 2 weeks ago. The force of confidence, of strength, of demand is literally bringing me into full prostration before it every day, and it is only getting stronger. But the revolutionary, overpowering, all-consuming effect that this has on a body of 25 of us who have in recent times seemed completely lost is of a different order altogether. This is impersonal enlightenment. This is what actually impersonal enlightenment does. Everything that the teachings say and everything that you personally are an expression of are now becoming alive, now being reborn. Every moment as us, not just you or your perfect teachings, but a human event in time and space between us, the one and the many, indistinguishable fullness, emptiness. It really is the same thing. One event is happening. I'm left in the most unbelievable place I would never have imagined. I am no more than I ever have ever been. In fact, I am sure that I'm less than I have been before, ever. I literally feel under new management. It's actually hard to describe because who I am is right now, and it is not who I was 5 seconds ago. Ocean waves of bliss overwhelm me, and then I'm left utterly empty, not knowing what is going on at all. And somehow both these experiences are the very same. I had no idea it was possible to love life this much. Dear Andrew, thank you for allowing us to be for your awe-inspiring meeting today, for your meeting with us afterwards, and for somehow pushing us over the edge into this miraculous, impersonal, evolutionary explosion that has not been there like that between us in over a year. I don't even know what to say. My nervous system is lit up like a Christmas tree right now after the events of the last 4 hours. I don't even know exactly what happened. I just felt like through a willingness to be true to what had resonated so deeply in all of us. When the women spoke, we suddenly found ourselves entering another dimension of being. And the more people spoke from it, the more intense it grew, much like August 2001. There was a kind of wild energy surging in the room, and at times a sense that anything could happen. But there was also a more rooted quality, a deeper autonomy that was there before, somehow reinforced and empowered by the holonic evolutionary structure you have built, which also revealed the tangible gaps that do exist. It is truly awesome, and the transformative potential of even one meeting feels off the scale. One enters another dimension where the mysterious relationship between individuality, collectivity, and this cosmic, impersonal, animating force becomes endlessly fascinating and ever self-revealing, and in which it wants to be known. Around the circle, people kept describing their experience as that of submission to a force that has conscious intent. My own experience was of being so completely taken over by it that at times I couldn't relate to any solid sense of myself at all. All morning, there has been a thrilling sense of the infinite potential that was unleashing itself between us last night. Wow. Just a couple more. This is from a woman named Melissa. She says, "It is that which wants to happen in unimaginable ways whenever we gather in its name. The delicate and rare recognition of our own humanity, forming perfectly anew in each moment, regardless of what has come before, is your incalculable gift to us. As we spoke and the circle widened, it seemed like one structure of relationship was giving way to another, and one could observe the shifting of boundaries from the old to the new, and the fact that we were conscious of it, consciously groping our way into a new dimension, was perhaps the most extraordinary quality of what was occurring. Imperfect beings, aware of our conditioning, consciously choosing to evolve. Our attention expanded, and we could see the structure of universal spirit incarnate as many, using us as its mouthpiece, revealing the perfection of being, a vast impersonality that rendered our notions of personal significance completely obsolete. One knew that this bigness is our destiny. The conversation that ensued soared us into the incredibly natural and engaged territory of evolution and enlightenment. As soon as we began speaking, a palpable feel of consciousness was present, accompanied with the ecstatic hunger to go further, to evolve. By the time we rose from our chairs, we were lighter, more intimate with the evolution of consciousness itself, and more fascinated by its dynamics. We were more in awe of the evolutionary significance of our own human lives as universal spirit incarnate. There were two very fascinating dimensions occurring simultaneously in our experience. One having to do with the outright expression, each woman on her own, of her own experience, and the other having to do with the recognition of the hunger of developing consciousness for the pure and authentic expression of each specific woman, regardless of how much or how little experience she may have had. We collectively became aware of this longing for authenticity and watched how, when this demand is the climate of our gathering, there is the miraculous accommodation for ever more dimensions and subtleties of experience, and consequently a possibility. We became aware of how a new criterion for perception, for discrimination, and for enunciation arises in concert with the larger consciousness enveloping us, as if the new being is insisting upon its own continued unfolding, pulling new capacities from us in order for its development to occur. We spoke about so much about the evolution from ego consciousness to liberated consciousness, and saw how our participation increased. As our participation increased, the liberating power and cognition of the being forming between us. This is from another woman named Ellen. Dear Andrew, how to begin to describe what happened last night? It was an unprecedented explosion amongst us women. This has never happened before amongst so many of us. This uncontainable force expanding with no obstructions, pulling more and more people into its field, moving faster than any of us could keep up with. Yet we were all completely together in it. The field of impersonality that the teachings create was so strong that there was no limitation on who could be there. More and more women were magnetically pulled by this force. The situation felt so uncontained. We were all leaning in, evolving, responding, seeing transformation occurring before our eyes. It felt like the essence of what it means to be a human being was starting to reveal itself. The fact that we are these conscious beings within, whom the evolutionary impulse finds its expression as conscience, who can choose for that and make possible the kind of miracle that we're beginning to experience together. It is awe-inspiring, endlessly fascinating, this ungraspable dynamic tension between autonomy and communion, which is all playing out right here in our own experience when we were just interested enough to begin to look. We had no idea. We had no idea what was happening, but this consciousness would not allow hesitation. All our ideas of even what it means to struggle were being turned on their heads. This surge in consciousness took us all way beyond what we thought was our own experience. And yet, as every person spoke, there was a sense of recognition, as if the boundaries of individuals were literally giving way to a greater experience, which was at the same time only informed by the authenticity of each individual's expression. There is, capital letters, no limitation to this miracle. And we have no idea where it is taking us, but it undeniably has an agenda. It undeniably has an agenda, and is demanding that more and more women dare to leap beyond the personal and be consumed by it.